What's up everybody, hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to rank all of the different playable characters in Twisted Metal 2 within a tier list. This list is just the opinions I've formed throughout playing the game on mostly normal difficulty with every character, and I'd love to hear your opinions on where you would place the characters in the comments below. I'll be ranking each vehicle with two main aspects in mind: ease of use and overall effectiveness in gameplay. While characters within each tier are ordered, I believe that vehicles within the same tier have overall highly similar levels of effectiveness and could be interchanged depending on the scenario. With that being said, let's start from the bottom of the list in the C tier. Starting out the list at the very bottom of C tier is Hammerhead. While I think Hammerhead is fairly easy to use due to the relatively high amount of armor and low speed, they just don't really bring enough to the table compared to the rest of the cast. Their special attack, Monster Crush, does pretty good damage and it comes out automatically when you ram into an opponent. It just doesn't do as much damage as you would hope, considering other characters like Axel can ram into opponents and do similar damage while also having an entirely other special attack to use. On top of that, Hammerhead personally has the worst feeling controls out of the whole cast, and it can sometimes be hard to have precise movement during combat. I don't think Hammerhead is a bad character, I just think there are much better options available. Following Hammerhead in the C tier is Grasshopper. Having low armor and pretty good speed is a good combination that can definitely work. The problem with Grasshopper lies with her special attack. She leaps into the air and homes in on an enemy, becoming fairly hard to hit. The problems with this are when you realize that you can't really use it in enclosed spaces due to having to jump in the air, and hitting walls and ceilings during this attack actually hurts Grasshopper. Considering Grasshopper's low armor, it also is typically very dangerous to launch yourself directly at opponents who do more ram damage than you. And on top of that, you can hit or freeze Grasshopper out of her special if you time your attack well enough, which isn't really too hard to do. This can make playing as Grasshopper really challenging at times. The one nice redeeming quality is the decent speed stat, which can let you maneuver around opponents and take less hits if played well enough. Ultimately, this has me feeling that Grasshopper unfortunately deserves her spot in the C tier. Our final entrant in the C tier is sadly Sweet Tooth. I've always really loved the design in this game, so it's really a shame how they did him dirty like this. I think his two best traits are his high armor stat and how fast his special weapon replenishes. If you can manage to hit a freeze and get on top of somebody, you can do a lot of damage by repeatedly ramming them and spamming your special. The real problems come down to just how slow and clunky he can feel to control. It can sometimes be a real challenge to orient yourself correctly in the heat of battle, which can frequently result in death. And to add insult to injury, Sweet Tooth isn't a part of the normal playable roster and requires a code to be imported in order to play as him. This also means that he doesn't have level codes associated with him, so if you game over at any point, you have to start all the way over. It means that beating the game as Sweet Tooth can require a lot of patience and mastery over the character in order to make it all the way through the story mode to unlock the ending. Starting off the bottom of the B tier is Twister. Twister is a glass cannon, given she has incredibly low armor but extremely high speed and a good special attack if used correctly. Twister's special attack can be challenging to use effectively, as you need to have enemies extremely close to you in order for it to hit them. With the previously mentioned low armor stat, this can be obviously very dangerous and can easily lead to Twister biting off more than she can chew and dying for it. However, if used well, trapping enemies in a tornado can lead to massive damage if you use your machine guns and other weapons while they're trapped and slamming into walls. This special is a very good special at its best. I feel it can just be really hard to get that optimal situation frequently, as enemies tend to just fly out of your tornado if you don't approach them perfectly. However, when mastered, I think Twister is a very viable character to choose. Just get ready to die quite a lot trying to get the hang of it. Up next in the B tier we have Mr. Slam. I think Slam is a really solid character that is mostly held back by his speed and handling. Slam's special can be tricky to use unless you freeze an opponent first, since you have to get right up on them and pick them up. His high armor lets him absorb more hits than most, which can lead to him being a lot more forgiving than characters like Twister. The worst thing about him is definitely his low speed and bad handling, which is what makes him fairly reliant on freezing enemies in order to close the distance. If he had just a bit higher speed and better handling, I think he would be A tier for sure, but as he stands, I think he's still a very solid character that's always worth picking. Following Slam in the middle of B tier is Outlaw 2. I think Outlaw is a really solid character and a good choice if you've never played the game before. Her stats are very balanced, and the special weapon is very easy and intuitive to use. The only tricky thing about the special is its relatively short range, meaning you have to put yourself in harm's way a bit. But if you manage to land both the beginning and ending shot of the special, it does very respectable damage, considering you don't really have to aim it at all. Outlaw is just a good character that I believe anyone could pick up and have a lot of fun with. Next up is the character you always see first, and that's Roadkill. Like Outlaw, Roadkill has a balanced assortment of stats, making him pretty versatile. Roadkill's special attack can be difficult to use properly, but when done correctly can absolutely delete enemy health bars. His special attack sends out a boomerang-like projectile that won't do much damage if it hits an enemy while initially flying out. However, if this attack connects with an enemy while it's returning to Roadkill, it does significantly more damage and can lead to very fast and easy kills if done right. The downside is it can sometimes be tricky to pull this off even when you freeze the enemy, and the projectile will collide with walls and other objects and can potentially break before it can return to you, making it sometimes impossible to get that return hit when in enclosed spaces. However, if you can master this special weapon, Roadkill is honestly one of the most fun and satisfying characters to use in the entire game. Coming in right after Roadkill is Specter. Specter is another character that has low armor, but high speed and a great special to make up for it. Specter's special attack is a missile that has high tracking and can go through obstacles to reach enemies. This makes it one of the easiest special attacks in the game to use effectively, as all you really have to do is aim in the general direction of an enemy and fire. Really, the only thing holding Specter back is that low armor stat, as he can get blown up really quickly if you aren't careful and get frozen or trapped. Though as long as you keep moving and never put yourself in a corner, Specter is a great character that everyone can have a blast using. Finishing at the top of B tier, we have Warthog. He's got great armor and a strong, easy to use special attack at the cost of having lower speed and relatively sluggish handling. I believe Warthog to be one of the easiest characters in the game for newcomers, as he can take a lot of hits while also outputting a lot of easy damage. His special attack sends out 3 missiles that home in on opponents and does very good damage. Like many others on this list, his main drawback is mainly just in the handling and can sometimes be tricky to deal with. Though I still believe Warthog to be a great character and one that I and many others love to play. Starting off the A tier and top 5, we have Shadow. He has decent armor and speed and one of the best special attacks in the game. He sends out a small shadow that moves along the ground, and then reactivating the attack detonates the shadow and deals damage to everyone within a decent sized radius. This attack will also do massively increased damage if it's detonated on a sloped surface, which can make killing enemies very easy under the right circumstances. Ultimately, this special is easy to use and outputs a ton of damage, making Shadow an A tier character. Up next in the number 4 spot is Mr. Grimm. Grimm is the quintessential glass cannon of this game, as he dies extremely quickly due to his light armor rating, but can also dish out massive amounts of damage and manage to be extremely fast and maneuverable while doing so. His special attack sends out a skull in a straight line, much like a power missile, but it does absolutely incredible damage to opponents upon connecting with them. All it takes to kill almost any enemy in this game is about 2 specials and at most a few other weapons to finish them off. The real challenge of playing Grimm is that really low armor stat, which means if you get caught by a freeze or just in a bad situation, you're likely to lose a life. However, with all of his strengths played to, Grimm is easily one of the most effective characters in Twisted Metal 2. Entering the top 3 characters in the game, we have Thumper at number 3. Thumper's stats are pretty balanced, with armor being the lowest stat at 2. However, Thumper's special weapon, the flamethrower, has the ability to absolutely melt opponents' health bars. Hitting an enemy with a freeze and then following up with a full-length special attack does absurd damage while being easy to pull off. Having this incredibly powerful special mixed with decent armor and speed makes Thumper one of the most consistent characters in the game to do well with. Coming in at the number 2 spot and the final character in A tier, we have Axel. Axel has very balanced stats, with the lowest being in speed. What truly makes Axel great in my opinion and warrants his spot at number 2 is his ludicrous ramming damage. Axel is a character that honestly doesn't need weapon pickups to kill enemies. He can literally just repeatedly ram them for incredible damage until they're dead. His special pairs really well with his playstyle, since it's a close range burst emitting from Axel that pops enemies up into the air. Due to this playstyle and not being totally reliant on weapon pickups, this has also made Axel the character of choice for most speedrunners of the game. However, there is still one character left to go in our list. The one and only S tier character taking the number 1 spot on the list is none other than Minion. I was debating on whether or not to add him to the list, but I figured if I'm going to add Sweet Tooth, then I'll add Minion too. He certainly wasn't hard to place on this list. I mean, just look at his stats. I think they speak for themselves. On top of that, his special weapon is clearly the best in the game, as it sends out a freeze along with 3 highly damaging missiles. Minion just outputs insane damage and tends to never die, making him the clear best character in Twisted Metal 2. And here is the complete list. Keep in mind this list is just my opinion, and I would love to hear yours in the comments below. I'd also really like to hear what content you would like to see next. Thank you guys as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.